Hi, everyone. My name is Natalie Dunaway, and I am the Outreach Coordinator with the Mississippi Library Commission. So, in this webinar, we're going to discuss community partnerships for lasting impact on your service populations and your service communities. So, a little bit about me. As Outreach Coordinator, what I do is I work with library systems all over the state in thinking about their strategic plan and actually executing strategic plans, writing them up. I help do needs assessments, community snapshots, community mapping, as well as any other demographic research that a library may need to get a better idea of the patron population that they serve. So that's just a few things I do under outreach. So today, like I said, we're going to talk about how to build community relationships to execute fruitful partnerships for your library's initiatives and projects. So let's get started. So some things that we'll discuss. We're going to discuss needs assessments and community mapping before you enter your partnerships. Some other things to consider before you enter partnerships in terms of what will be under the library's purview, some questions to ask yourself before you enter into agreements, some things to think about and ask your potential partners as well. We're going to talk about some simple tips to keep in mind when you reach out to a potential partner, how to communicate maybe your initiative or project idea, your partnership idea to them, how to maintain effective communication throughout the partnership, and how to evaluate and kind of wrap up the partnership. And then finally, we'll top this off and end it with some resources that may be beneficial for you all. So, first off, what is a community partnership? So I've got a little link down here to a website called instrumental.com. They have a great article and resources for nonprofit community partnerships. We all know that libraries are not nonprofits. They are political subdivisions. However, you will see resources and links in here to places where it might say, X, Y, and Z for my business, or getting community feedback, or doing assessments for my nonprofit. Just because you're not a business, just because you're not a nonprofit, doesn't mean that there's not content in there that could be beneficial and fruitful for you. So, you might just have to extrapolate a little bit, but I think some of the resources we have will be helpful for kind of guiding you through the partnership process. But anyways, that's a side note. Um, so what is a community partnership? So, according to Instrumental, community partnerships refer to strategic alliances formed between various local organizations, businesses, or individuals to achieve a common goal that benefits the community. These partnerships can be formal, they can also be informal. So, a little bit about that. Formal partnerships tend to, in nature, span more months, or maybe even an annual process. May even span a whole year. They tend to have larger goals. They may have more deliverables in different stages. And formal partnerships are where you might find, paperwork and formal agreements and things like that. Much more structured, like I said, bigger goals, longer timelines, more variables. Informal partnerships, which I think a lot of us engage in, are a little bit more verbal agreements. You may have a list of obligations agreed upon, via email. So I guess that's technically written out. But they're a little more word of mouth, verbal agreements, maybe a shorter timeline, smaller goals, things like that. So that's just something to keep in mind when you think about the kind of partnerships your library may engage in, or what may be appropriate for them. So, Library Research Service up here, they are a partner organization with, I believe, the Colorado State Library. I've got their link down here at the bottom right. And when I was thinking about and researching types of library partnerships, I found their page. And what's interesting is they sort of created a visual guide of different categories of partnerships that libraries might find themselves in. So, if you are a visual person, and it kind of helps to lay out who might do what in a partnership, this might be helpful for you when you think about the resources your library has, when you think about what y'all are able to provide or bring to the table, or what you expect of your project or initiative partner. But anyway, so we'll talk through them a little bit. On the left here, you have the 50-50 partnership. You can see that tasks are kind of equally divided or equally participated in, and the library gets, in this case, in this example, access to a target community, and your partner might get access to library resources. So there seems to be kind of an equal exchange and an equal participation. Library intensive partnership, you can see the library bubble here is a little bit bigger than the partner bubble, so the library takes on a little bit more of the work, but they both might participate in some activities, and what the library gains is access to the target community. All right, partner intensive over here on the left, the opposite of library intensive, and then you have passive over here on the right. I think our passive partnerships, or what I see at least, what I've seen at least since I've been in this role, kind of what libraries tend to find themselves in more. Libraries and the partner organization, they kind of do their own activities, but what they exchange is information. Library in this instance gets access to a target community, while the partner gets maybe support and access to library resources. So seems to be, both organizations sort of have their own sort of sectioned off activities and learning opportunities, etc., but they exchange information and access to each other's service populations. So that's something, like I said, if you're kind of visual, that might help you in mapping out what kind of partnership you might think would fit your project or initiative best, as well as your library best. So let's see. Next, where do I start? I've never really engaged in a partnership before, Natalie. Where do I kind of start with all this? Well, I'm a big fan, before you start getting into agreements with organizations, before you start getting to agreements and obligating yourself to, a set of tasks to meet a goal and things like that, let's assess what's kind of going on. So before you sit down at a table with a potential community partner on a project or an outreach initiative, you really want to know your numbers, know your programming numbers, know kind of your circulation numbers, your services, have a really good feel of what's going on in your library, because what this will ultimately be able to help you do is find out where any potential gaps are in services or programs or whatever it may be. And really know why you're considering a partnership. Write it down, flesh it out. What do you want? What do your patrons want? What does your community need? Right? So let's really think and be honest and forthcoming about why we want to engage in a particular partnership. And then let's think about, get with staff, ruminate, look at past files, do what you need to do, look at past numbers. What was tried in the past? What were the outcomes and feedback of those efforts? Okay? And kind of like you can predict, assess your staff and your library resources. How do they feel about entering into a project partnership? Are they able to do it? What resources do y'all have now? Do we have the staff time? Do we have the staff manpower? Because again, what this enables you to do is outline what you will need and what you can provide to the partnership. And we gotta kind of know that before we go into it. We don't want to sit across a table from someone asking them for their time and their effort and their resources and their staff time. And when they say, well, what does the library want to do? What can y'all kind of help us with? We don't want to be in a situation where we say, oh, well, I'm not really sure. We want to know that beforehand. Because again, keep in mind, all this is for lasting relationships, ideally, with your community partners, right? So we want to look prepared. We want to look ready. We want to know that this is going to be an intentional effort, right? So then next, finally, assess your community. Think about the populations you serve. Think about their demographics, ethnicity, religious demographics, mobility, education, healthcare. Do the people in your community, in your county, in your service populations, what statistic? I mean, what number of them, what percentage of them have access to health insurance? How many are veterans? Are there ADA issues throughout your community? What's the general age, education level, things like that. Um, Again, what health services already exist: dental offices, mental health services, rehab facilities. What public, social, or government services are available? Education institutions or groups, cultural groups. Are there any migrant support services? Do you have migrant populations in your communities? What nonprofits already exist that might work towards the same sort of advocacy goals that your libraries do? Religious institution, are there public, are there recreation spaces? So do some community mapping, do some demographic digging, do some assessment building so we can get a good clear picture of that. And if you don't know how to do that and you don't know where to start, my email is in the webinar. It'll be in the last thank you slide as well. So feel free to reach out and I'm happy to help you do that. It can seem kind of like a big effort, but it's really great and it helps really narrow down what your community needs, and it will help kind of guide you in being very intentional in figuring out the parameters and the goal of your potential partnership or initiative or project. All right, so checklist. We've talked about a needs assessment. We've talked about pre-partnership. Oh no, that's the next slide, is pre-partnership. So our checklist is going to travel with us throughout this webinar. So I like to see nice green check marks. So we've gotten through needs assessments. We've gotten through community mapping and talking about why that's so important. So next, pre-partnerships, some things to consider again before you sit down at that table. So from the library side, again, and I'm going to reiterate this because it's very important, what is the why? Why are you wanting to engage in a partnership? What goal is this partnership going to achieve? And how do you see the library participating in this? What staff do you see working with you on this? And what are their current obligations and duties and responsibilities? What will their, um, obligation of time look like? What resources can the library bring to the partnership? Are participating staff able and prepared to discuss and represent the library? So, your vision as this leader of this project, of this potential partnership. Do the staff you need to work with know it? Do they understand why you're doing it? Do they understand what the goal is? If they're going to be participating in this, if they're going to be at a booth, if they're going to be talking about it, if they're going to be representing this project or this partnership, they need to know, and it's your responsibility to tell them. And what is your timeline? How will you maintain a positive relationship with the partnering organization moving forward? If it's beneficial, how are you going to maintain this moving forward? If you get to the end of it and it's something that you think that you would like to continue on a regular or annual basis to do, think about how you would maintain a positive relationship with your partnering organization. So just some things to think about and flesh out in your mind, again, before we sit at that table, before we make those phone calls, before we agree to work with another organization on something. And then from the partner side, why this organization? Why you as a library, as a librarian, as the project leader? Why are you wanting to partner with this organization? What will they bring to the table? What service and knowledge gaps will they help you fill? And how do you see them participating in this? What is their mission? What is this partnering organization or individual? What are their values? Are they aligned with your library's values? Because if they're not, it may not be the best partnership. I don't know. It's just some things to ask yourself in relation to whatever your goal is. What does their budget? What is their staff resources? What does all that look like? And what's their annual timeline? Will it align with your project timeline? So different organizations have different timelines. They have different, busy times of the year. Is that going to work with what you need to accomplish this initiative and to have a beneficial partnership? Again, things to think about. So, all right. So we got through assessing community needs. We got through, kind of what we think about before we dive into a partnership. And now let's talk about reaching out. So you kind of know, you know what you want to do. You've got some organizations lined up that you want to contact, and you want to make a phone call. You want to send an email. You're ready to make contact. So my advice is to do your best to know who to contact within an organization. I have in my community mapping and my reaching out to companies or potential partner organizations, if I cannot find position titles, if I can't find emails, I usually reach out to the HR person and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I want to do, this is how you can contact me, who in the organization is best to talk to for this, right? And it's worked for the most part. Be professional and kind, but be direct and clear. Make sure you introduce yourself and introduce your library as well. This is not the time to be meek. This is not the time to be shy. This is the time to be excited and to say, hey, we're interested in doing this thing with y'all. Let's talk about it. Okay. I do find sometimes that librarians may forget that not everybody knows what all libraries and librarians do. So keep that in mind. So introduce yourself, introduce your services and your resources, and be excited about this potential partnership. And depending on the formality level, you may reach out with a phone call or email. But even if this is someone that you know, even if this is Susan, who you've known for 10 years, y'all see each other every Sunday at the church potluck, send follow-up emails. And the reason I encourage you to do that is because it keeps whatever project or initiative y'all are working together on, it keeps that on track. You know, with all that you're already doing in library land, you know, you can't remember the ins and outs of every conversations. But if you have an email that you can refer back to, you know where you stepped off, or you know where you left off in previous communication. Also, it's crucial for knowledge retention. So not everybody or I mean, you may not be in your position forever, right? Or your colleague or your employees may not be in their positions forever. And so when someone else is trying to look back and see what projects and what partners were partnered with before, having those emails for that knowledge retention to see what was done previously will be super, super helpful. Make sure emails have consistent signatures and appropriate logos. Again, for lasting partnerships, we got to look a little bit like we know what we're doing, and we're intentional and we're serious. So make sure there's consistency, make sure your logos and your signatures are consistent, just kind of what I would advise. And also, if you're interested in partnering with an organization or an individual and you give them a call or you shoot them an email and they don't respond, try again. I have been in conversation with folks before who say, well, we really wanted to do X, Y, and Z project. So we called this group, or we called this organization, or we messaged this person on Facebook, and they just didn't respond. And I usually say, well, what did y'all do after that? And sometimes I'm kind of met with shrugs. And that's kind of where whatever the initiative or project was, that's where it died. So let's try more than once. You know, if you call 3 times, if you introduce yourself via email a couple times and you just don't get a response, that could be a really good indicator that maybe this is not an organization that you want to work with, because obviously maybe communication isn't always the most consistent with them. But let's give it a good effort. And then if you're able to, if they seem interested, set up a meeting. Communicate the overall purpose for reaching out, and then tell them you'd love to meet with them to discuss further, learn more about their organization, from, you know, their own pitch and how they'd be able to contribute and also benefit from this partnership. Again, we'll get into this a little bit in a second, but this is a two-way street. And you're asking for someone for their time and their staff and their resources and their effort. You're likely asking for it for free. So we want to make sure that they understand how they can get something out of this as well, right? And you want them to work with you in the future, right? We want them, if it's a really good partnership and it's beneficial and we meet all our goals and we're able to reach that service population we couldn't reach, we're able to get that information out and it's all good. We want them to say, oh, you know, working with that library was really easy. It was great. It benefited us. We'd love to do it again. So it's a two-way street. Keep that in mind. All right, needs assessment. things to think about pre-partnership and then reaching out. Now we're going to go to communicating your idea to a potential community partner. So again, this is a little bit repetitive, but it bears repeating. Know your vision and goals for the partnership. When you're communicating, hey, this is what we'd like to do, this is our project, or this is our initiative, this is our vision. Know that and know your goals. Know how you want your partner to engage and contribute, but leave plenty of room for them to give input, because we're engaging in a partnership, right? So they have knowledge, they have expertise, they have access to things that you as the library are going to be kind of relying on. So give them room to contribute and to be able to say, well, if you want to do X, Y, and Z, we can do that, but we might need to do it this way instead of that way. We want to leave room for that. Make sure to understand what their goals are in this partnership, also as an organization. And for a lasting relationship, like I said, they've got to feel like this is beneficial for them too. And ask your project partner what sort of communication works for them and their staff. And go ahead in this stage and set communication expectations as well as scheduled check-ins. If this is going to be something, a project or initiative where y'all are going to have to work together over a series of months, there's going to be, a series of points where there might be some intermediate deliverables where we can't do B without getting to A. You're going to need a regular kind of check-ins and to lay out a consistent communication map. That would be my advice. All right, so communicating the idea, reaching out, pre-partnerships, needs assessments, and then maintaining communication throughout the project or the initiative, whatever it is, whatever the partnership is, formal or informal. Communication is going to look a little different with varying styles and types of partnerships. Again, if you're in a small town in the Delta and you know the person that works at this catfish farm and they're going to get this information out to their employees and y'all see each other each Sunday at the potluck, you know Susan real well, you're probably going to have a little bit more of an informal style of communication. And that's fine, but it should still be consistent, right? So again, consistent, clear communication is essential. You don't have to overdo it. You don't have to ask for constant updates, but make it consistent, make it clear, make it intentional. Be respectful and be responsive if you get any requests for information from them. And notify parties of any updates and any feedback. So if there are steps that have measurable variables within them, keep your partner kind of abreast of what is going on, right? And report that. All right, and we're to the final stage, sort of evaluating the partnership. Let's say we get to the end of it, we're looking at our goals. Did we meet it? How was the project? How did we work together? So we'll talk a little bit about that. Things to think about when you're evaluating and you're closing out the life cycle of your partnership. So first and foremost, not all partnerships are meant to last. You may have a project that you work with an organization on and you actually met your goals and it kind of turned out fine, but maybe communication wasn't strong. Maybe there were some variables or some staff in their organization that were a little difficult to work with. Maybe there were some inconsistencies. So even though you met your goal, it may not be someone that's a great fit to work with for what you need in your library in the future. So like I said, not all partnerships are meant to re-up or meant to last, and that's okay, and that's normal, and it doesn't mean that we can't, be respectful and thank them for their time. We can do all that and still understand that maybe this isn't something to do in the future. And use the previous metrics that you were thinking about. Who's going to do what? What are their resources? What are their staff like? What's the morale of this organization? What's the morale of our employees? What's the morale of our community? Use those metrics to evaluate whether the partnership was kind of beneficial for everyone involved. Were goals and methods worth the investment and time? You might have met your goal, but was it worth what all you invested in terms of time and resources? What was your partner's attitude? Were there any changing variables? Were there any changing factors or timelines that kind of popped up and you had to reroute the project or the initiative? And What was your partner's attitude with that? What was your attitude? What was your staff attitude? How did that affect your library and your services? How did that affect the project? Things to think about. What could be changed in the future, and share outcomes and feedback. And of course, it could have been a great partnership you want to continue. It could have been something that maybe wasn't a great fit. Either way, make sure to say thank you, make sure to give proper credit, make sure to close it out with gratitude as best you can, and move from there. So we've kind of reached the end here. Yay, applause. I hope this was beneficial. I hope it was informative and kind of laid out a little roadmap for you all as you start to think about community partners, start to think about projects to work with them on, and reaching out and getting all that going. So, like I said, I'm going to leave you all with some resources. So, this is webinar version, so obviously you can't really copy and paste the text really, excuse me. But if you Google nonprofit community partnerships, a success guide for 2024, Instrumental will pop up. And you can always double check by looking at the URL, making sure it matches. So these are resources I think will be helpful in kind of getting your mind working, getting the wheels turning when you start to think about partnership efforts. We got a couple more on the next slide. How to conduct a community needs assessment, IMLS asset mapping user guide. Now this is a PDF, so make sure that you get the right thing. If you Google it, it's 9 pages. It's a pretty beneficial guide for that. So all right, everybody, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining me in this webinar. Again, my name is Natalie Dunaway. I'm the Outreach Coordinator at the Library Commission in Jackson. So if you ever need any advice, or you just want to get on the phone and chat, or set up a little Zoom meeting to talk about potential partnerships or project or initiative idea you have, or gathering demographics on your community, how to kind of go about that, let me know. We can get on the phone. Like I said, we can get on Zoom. No big deal. My time is your time, so good luck with your future endeavors and your partnerships and your community assessments and serving your patrons. Thank you so much.